reopening tourism, which we didn't really get to discuss so much. Something we will discuss right now: reopening of schools. As GDOE Superintendent Jon Fernandez joins us in the KUAM News Zoom room. Morning, John.
Hey, good morning, Chris, and good morning, Sabrina and Jason. Yeah, I mean, we have there's so much going on, and every time we come up every Wednesday, and you let me go ahead and start, I always have to figure out what to start with, and so happy to answer any questions you guys have about our current, issues and challenges and activities, whether it's laptop distributions, whether it's tracking our missing students. This Friday, we have a board meeting. We're going to be tackling our grading and attendance policy, and just a lot going on. But you're right. As we talk about where we are today, we also have to think about where we want to be, next week, next month, beginning of the year, and how because if we're going to do whatever we do, we need to plan for what that looks like in case, for instance, in case we get to a point where we're able to go back to face-to-face instruction at our schools. And I guess I want to make it very clear to our community was that, there's nothing at this point has given us any evidence that we can replace classroom instruction with, our online platform. What we're doing right now with distance learning is trying to cope with the pandemic, but we have to get to a point where we want to, can have our kids and our teachers and staff safely back in schools. So the key is safely, right? And I think that's been the primary, concern for all of us in the community. And as we watch day to day, what we've been looking at is tracking, those key indicators that would give us a sign that we are getting back into a situation where reopening might be an option. So basically, over the past couple of weeks, and definitely probably over the next 2 months, this reopening discussion and what our options are, what our plans are, will be made more public, and we'll have a much more transparent and visible discussion with all of our stakeholders, our board, and our partners. What I've been doing, I kind of shared it in social media just with some of our, some of the folks who pay attention, is we went to the Center for Disease Control to track, to get some updated guidance on school reopenings. And from there, what we've done is put together a preliminary, what we call a dashboard that tracks these indicators over, on a day-to-day basis. And so what I did, a couple of weekends ago was sit down with all the joint information reports, the JIC reports, and I just manually, pulled together all the new cases, the total cases, the kids 0 to 9, 10 to 19, and just track that information way back to July 1st, all the way to today, to try to figure out if that CDC guidance, was lining up with our experience in Guam, and whether it would give us any guidance going forward. And so back in July, when we looked at the statistics, going back in July, we were preparing to reopen. And at that time, if you look at the statistics and the framework, we were in the lower to lowest risk categories. And then, of course, as we got into August, we saw those numbers and statistics, move higher into the high or highest risk categories. And that's where we still are today. And so, we have a lot of advocates in the community, some who are just, very scared of coming back to school, and some who say our kids need to be back in school right away, and let's just see what we can do and try to do that as soon as possible. When we're talking about the Department of Education, it's important that we rely on expert guidance, and we've turned to the CDC for that. And what we want to do is use the CDC guidelines to really help us navigate through the next 2 months. I don't think we're going to be in a position, based on where we are today, to reopen our schools before the end of December. I mean, it looks like, November might be the earliest possible time. And then by that time, it doesn't make sense to open for a couple of weeks and then go on break with the kids. So, the real possibility is looking at January at the earliest and seeing what we need to do to determine whether that will be an option to go back face to face, and then under what terms and conditions. So I've reactivated, or I am reactivating our reopening planning team. We'll be talking with the board at the board meeting this Friday, and then we hope to engage our stakeholders, very publicly, our parents, our teachers, and our students about the options leading into the next semester. So that's kind of where we are with the reopening, conversations.
Right. And like our good buddy, man, I haven't seen Dr. Cabrera in a minute, but he's got this saying, discussions are not decisions. And that's what you're doing right now, is just discussing this, right, John?
Yeah, again, I think the issue for us is, I was listening to to your show earlier today, and you know, so many people are going through a lot of stress and a lot of anxieties, but at the same time, we still have to pull it together and plan for the future. And there are things that we can't control necessarily, at least from GDOE standpoint, other than to do our personal best to stay safe. But the community risk factors that are out there, the number of new cases, the positivity rate, all of those indicators are in the highest risk categories right now. And so that's just where we are. And if we end up being in that same environment in January, it's going to be very difficult to return to face and to assure everybody that we'll be safe. There is we are focused on our mitigating efforts. These are the efforts that we take in school to be safe. So right now we've got supplies that we've purchased, the face masks, the hand sanitizers, the cleaning supplies, the disinfectants. We're working on water bottle filling stations and other supports, plexiglass installation. And so, whatever the case may be, we do expect that those will need to be in place before we can open any of our schools. So while the community health situation is, not necessarily in our control, and we're working with public health to try to get that in better shape, we are working actively and prepare our school facilities for the possibility of reopening. But the key thing somebody reminded me is that sometimes you get all this pressure about making these decisions alone, and trying to make the decisions for the best of everybody. But as you can tell from your listeners, we probably have parents on all ends of the spectrum about whether it's safe to go back or not. And I just think that as part of the planning and discussions, we're already thinking about doing what we call rapid response surveys to monitor our stakeholder viewpoints and perceptions as we go through this 2-month period, and as we discuss and provide information to them. We need to know that even if the superintendent says, yeah, we're getting to a point and it's safe to come back, that really doesn't matter if all the teachers don't feel the same way, or if our parents don't feel the same way. Right. So, it's a little bit more complicated with such a big organization, but we've done a really good job, I think, of trying to allow for a lot of input sessions for parents, for teachers, and for students. And we plan to do a lot of that, definitely, if we're going to get to a situation where we discuss reopening our school facilities.
Are you considering also scenarios in which maybe you might open schools in the southern part, but not in the northern part of Guam? Because, as we heard earlier today, there's just that's where a lot of the cases are located.
Well, we definitely are working to consider different types of phase-in plans. So for sure, that was brought up by one of the team members about regional, whether we could do it regionally. So we really have to look closely at that. And of course, this is going to be in real close partnership with public health and our governor and the team there about what will be authorized to do. But yeah, we're open to that. I mean, that was an idea brought up. My concern, of course, is we're such a small island, and if we're not really staying home, and if we've got people circulating around the island, then regional might not be enough of a protection or an assurance. But we are looking at the characteristics for younger kids versus older kids. We do know that many of our special needs students and their families are pushing to see if they can get in school services and whether they can come. So we do want to talk and discuss, different phase-in options, so that unlike what we were planning, in August, where everybody would come back on an alternating schedule, face-to-face, we might, I think we're definitely going to look at what other options we have to phase it in a little bit more gradually, and then really build the assurance in our community that things are safe. And again, it's not just a matter of supplies and equipment going into the schools. We're also trying to build in the training component, making sure that people feel comfortable understanding what to do if there are incidents, how to properly use our PPEs, a lot of things that go into implementation of those safety procedures. So we do want to, to allow for that and not to simply jump back into a broader scale reopening without, at least at the front end. So those are all up for discussion. But again, our guiding framework is going to be, using the CDC guidance, and then really working on shoring up our school facilities and bringing our stakeholders along with us through regular surveys and input sessions for all of them. So, again, I hate to kind of talk about this sometimes, because I know that many of our employees and our families are overwhelmed just kind of getting through the day-to-day operations that were currently underway, much less creating space in our minds for thinking about, what's going to happen in 2 months and how do we get ready for that. So, but again, we will definitely keep you updated on those efforts, and it'll be a public discussion for sure.
John, I wanted to ask about progress reports. I got parents messaging that the first quarter ends tomorrow. A lot of them haven't gotten the progress reports. We haven't seen any grades. So what's the status with that? Is it kind of a school by school thing, or is this happening department wide?
We are, this is one of the situations where, first of all, I've listened to the show or been able to listen to it afterwards. And, you guys reached out to me with just trying to get information about certain things that were brought up. And then I just have to say, this morning as well, into your conversation this morning, this is a really high anxiety, high stress environment for many people. I mean, not just from the health standpoint, but definitely for DOE employees and families. And so I'm just going to ask that our community not be too overly anxious about some of the things that would normally happen during the regular school year. So one of those things would be grading and attendance. We got a lot of questions and concerns, and the message that we have to our employees and our schools is, let's be as accommodating as possible right now for all the families, because we know we're making this shift and transition, and things just aren't going to operate like they did last year. So over the last couple of weeks, we've been working with our schools, elementary, middle, and high, on grading and attendance policy for the first quarter, so that we can communicate that out to the public. Unfortunately, we're coming to the end, and the decision will be made, at the board meeting. But where we are today, and Joe Sanchez really led this with a large group of teachers from all levels. It looks like the first quarter, what the recommendation will be is not to use that as a summative grading period, giving the A's, B's, C's, but really as a point in time progress report in terms of where we are this first semester. And that we will look to that second quarter to really be the quarter to be able to provide a summative grade for the entire semester. So where our parents might have been expecting, okay, let's get a letter grade or a percentage, on the work that's been done to date. And of course, some are concerned about whether that would be fairly given out, given the circumstances and the different models of learning. What we're trying to get done is to enable our teachers and administrators and our parents to say, look, let's get a progress report for where we are at the end of first quarter. Some of our kids have been able to easily connect and be up to speed since the first day of school. Some haven't. Some have been working through the hard copies. There's, so many different types of issues have come up. We didn't think it would be fair and an accurate assessment to use our regular grading policy for that purpose. So we are going to address that on Friday officially. But from my understanding, today we have a work session with the board, and the recommendation from our teachers is to, again, use the first quarter as a progress report. Now, where grades really matter is at the high school level. The high school level is where those grades matter for, and the, as you go through the year. So, the high school will, that's going to be a little bit more complicated as we get into the second quarter. But for now, what we're saying is first quarter, please don't stress out about it. Don't stress out about it that, if you get you're going to get your A or B or C and it's not deserved because of this circumstance or that circumstance, or look, you know what, we want you to be in touch with your teacher. We want you to be able to have a conversation about where your kids are doing well and not well, and how do we address all these issues that may affect your particular circumstance. But, it's not a time to be overly focused on the first quarter grade like we might have been in prior years.
I mean, but so, my kids are doing all the first quarter work though, John.
Yeah, no, they will get, I mean, they should get assessed and they should be provided the proper, but as far as the actual results, I mean, at the second quarter, at this point is status quo. So by the time you get your semester grades, that should all be reflected. But I think for others who may have had different circumstances, the work's there, but the teachers, may not feel they have enough evidence for everybody to get a grade, and the number of students in that category, it just might not be a fair assessment to issue grades. Again, for our elementary and middle school students, that's it's less of a consequence than it would be for high schoolers. So that's why there's been a lot of discussion with the teachers. But by second semester, there will be a grade for second semester, and that's being discussed as well as part of this policy discussion. But let me say, Chris and Sabrina, if I could, I heard, a couple of days ago, a parent on the radio, a lot of parents, expressing some of the issues they may or may not be seeing. And, when I look on social media, it's always a back and forth because we know many of our teachers are working hard, and sometimes they're quick to jump in and defend what's happening or support and explain what's happening. But I have to say this, the best solution really is for the teacher and the administrator to be sitting down and kind of working through those specific issues for those specific children. So in the case of the caller, even though I know it was anonymous, we didn't know who the parent was, and we have reached out, and there is a meeting set up so we can have the administrator kind of focus in on what those complaints were, because they weren't aware. And I think they definitely know that there are complaints, and they need to address it and resolve it. And we encourage that they just stay in communication, because I think at this point, if you got your teachers, administrators, and parents on different pages, it's just not going to be great for the student, and we're going to have this level of frustration that we heard on the radio a couple of days ago. Mm-hmm. So again, I know she was concerned not just about health, about the hard copy situation, the fears about COVID-19, how things are going to be graded. Again, we're all in the same boat. It's a different situation this year. And again, I think a sit down with the administrator and teachers who are involved will help us, resolve those issues. And we just want to open that door for all parents who feel that frustration.
Right. And speaking of frustration, months ago, the Department of Education was awarded that stabilization funds, I think, from USDOE. And the plan was to use some of it for, I want to say, behavioral health and wellness of the students. What happened to that program?
No, that's mostly going to be a sort of a training and a train-the-trainer type of support that we were able to do earlier in the year. Mm-hmm. And I guess the question really is about, on an ongoing basis, how we can continue to provide that support when there's no face-to-face.
Oh, so it's only face-to-face.
Yeah, I do think a lot of it was really focused on, as we got back to the beginning of the year, making sure our teachers and staff, were able to transition back. And when kids started in those first weeks, really ensure that kids are in a place where they can focus on learning. So it's been really frustrating having to not be able to come back physically, but we understand why. And so, a lot of our social workers that are deployed right now are actually focusing on what we consider to be maybe the more worrisome situation right now, are those who haven't been in contact at all with the schools. So, I think at this point we have about 1,000 students left. We started with about 4,000 beginning of the year, brought that down to about 2,800, turned it over to the social workers and attendance officers to really focus in on repeated attempts to contact students. And we have about 1,000 left. Of those 1,000, I think 800 of them are really requiring home visits. Because there's been no success in reaching them with all the efforts been put in. And there's about 200 that we're still calling. Hopefully we'll connect with them. Once we get to a situation where home visits are possible, the plan is to go and see what's happening with those students.
Thank you, John, so much for your time this morning. We do have some organic, free range baked pumpkin turnover in the Zoom room. It's virtual, so if you want to grab a few for the staff.
I want the virtual cinnamon rolls. That's what I'm looking for, but I'll have to come back on another.
Yeah, cinnamon rolls are on Thursday. You come on Wednesday. See you, John. Thank you.
Thanks for the progress report.
Yeah, we got Our progress report.
Yeah, from the secret passing grade.
Right. Let's go right back into the KUAM News Zoom room where they just do a quick sanitize.